Got an opportunity to have a sensible energy transition with an integrated energy system. The gas system provides a lot of security into our energy system, and if we actually get the policy right, we can afford to then, play off the benefits of each of the benefits of the energy system.
Hello and welcome to Michelson Alexander Explains. Today we are talking about the potential of renewable gas in Australia's decarbonisation journey. What role could renewable gases like biomethane play in the transition? What kind of misconceptions are there around renewable gas, and how can we change the narrative? I'm Matilda Finn, Acting Associate, and I'm joined by my colleague James Fitzpatrick, Senior Associate and our Head of Operations, as well as special guest Mike Davis, the Managing Director of Optimal Renewable Gas. Mike has over 15 years of experience in the energy sector. He has held several senior technical and commercial roles with APA, ATCO Australia and Jemena, where he was responsible for developing and commercialising underground gas storage, gas transmission and expansion, gas-fired power generation, green hydrogen production and blending into the gas grid. Thank you for joining us today, guys. Mike, you have over 15 years of experience in the energy sector. Can you talk us through how you view the current renewable gas landscape in Australia and what changes we've actually seen over the last couple of years?
I think we're at an exciting point in the transition of the gas system. So I think we're looking at the first renewable gas project that's going to be injecting biomethane into the gas grid. And that's an enormous opportunity to accelerate this market. But to date, a lot of the opportunity hasn't been realised. So we are in this country, I think we're laggards really compared to other countries like Germany and United Kingdom, the US, and even China now, that make a whole lot better use of their organic waste and residues by converting them into biogas and ultimately biomethane for consumption inside their gas infrastructure.
So Optimal Renewable Gas's mission is to deliver renewable biomethane facilities alongside other forms of renewable gas to industry. Firstly, what actually is biomethane? Because I think some people might get a bit confused about what biomethane actually is.
Yeah, very, very good question. So in its simplest form, it's the capture of biogas from the natural breakdown of organic material. And as we clean that biogas up and process it, we can meet a natural gas specification, and that's the differentiation of biogas to biomethane. So biomethane effectively is biogas that has been processed to be interchangeable with natural gas. But of course, biogas is of course that bioenergy that's been captured.
And what are some of the benefits of biomethane as opposed to other renewable gases or other renewable energy technologies?
I think the most important characteristic of biomethane is that it's interchangeable with natural gas, so it is that same specification. So we hear a lot about hydrogen, and hydrogen is going to play an important role in the energy mix going into the future. But hydrogen's a different molecule. It's not completely interchangeable with natural gas. The other thing, and I guess if you look at renewable gases as a subset in the energy system, they play a really important role because molecules in the energy system, so both being hydrogen and biomethane, can be used more on demand. So energy in the form of a molecule is really important in a transitioning energy system because it can utilise the inherent storage inside gas infrastructure. So it can really complement the intermittency of wind and solar and provide that energy demand that's not coincidental with wind and solar generation. So it really does provide that ideal part in the energy mix that we're looking for in terms of meeting existing demand where people don't have to change their equipment and appliances, but also provide that responsiveness and that capacity to complement the energy transition.
And you're talking about, the potential of biomethane in the future and renewable gas in the networks. And you were part of Australia's first biomethane to grid project in collaboration with Sydney Water. What actually is the current state of play of biomethane in Australia and for that matter in other parts of the world? Because I've heard that Australia is a bit far behind when it comes to biomethane, that other countries in Europe have sort of been on this train for about 10 years now.
The Malabar biomethane project is a really important stepping stone for Australia's domestic market because it's the first time biomethane will be available inside existing gas infrastructure. And really importantly, Green Power have also are participating in that project and have developed a certification scheme. Now that is really important part of enabling the market because for the first time it connects that voluntary customer demand to renewable gas. So just like a lot of people now were thinking about, okay, well, I can't get solar on my roof, but I want to be renewable. I'd like to contract my renewable electricity from a wind or solar farm. This enables that opportunity, that demand that wants to decarbonise now can bring that demand and contract to renewable gas position. Now, for a developer like me, that's really, really important because that voluntary demand can really start underwriting investment in the infrastructure to bring that gas in. Now, you mentioned we are a little bit behind. Well, we're actually a long way behind. The great thing about biomethane is that it is existing and proven technology. So if we look across Europe, there's 50,000 anaerobic digestion plants, and they all capture the breakdown of organic material. In Australia, we also have a huge amount of organic waste and residues, but we don't recover that energy effectively. A lot of those organics are going to landfill. They're land spread. They might be composted, but of course that doesn't mean we're recovering or reusing that energy. So, we have a really exciting opportunity in terms of where the Australian market is because we've got a huge amount of organic waste. We're a very centralised population, so we've got a lot of waste streams in and around our municipal areas and our wastewater systems. But we've got a huge agricultural sector, which provides a huge amount of resource. And I prefer to think of it as a resource rather than waste streams that we can utilise. And then on the other side, we've got a huge demand for renewable energy, particularly for hard to electrify sectors. And so we've got this opportunity to bring a proven technology now, and we can actually leverage all the lessons learned that Europe and the rest of the world's gone through in this technology over the last 20 years. We can apply that technology and we can bring a really valuable renewable source of energy in, which is that, as I said, that renewable molecule that can be used on demand and really complement our energy transition.
So, Mike, to me, it sounds like such a great solution to multiple problems. You've got organic waste that we're actually using, we're doing something with it, and then you're filling that gap, that need, as you say, households all around the country and governments are trying to move as much of our energy source to renewable energy. And it seems like you've got a solution to both of those problems. Why is this not already everywhere across Australia? Why is it not more prominent? Why don't we know more about it?
I think there's a couple of things there. I think there's a perception or misunderstanding about energy. I think a lot of people think of energy in terms of electricity, and electrification is the only possible pathway. Of course, energy is a lot more complicated than that. Energy is gaseous fuels and liquid fuels, and just like electrons can be from multiple sources, both coal and renewable, so can molecules. So I think the perception is that gas is a fossil fuel. You hear, gas and coal being used interchangeably as fossil fuels in the same sentence. Well, gas doesn't have to be a fossil fuel. Gas is just a form of energy in a gaseous molecule, and that molecule can come from renewable sources, just like an electron. And I think it's often that misunderstanding that drives people to think about, we need to electrify everything. We need incentives in the electricity sector. We've had renewable electricity. We've had renewable energy targets, but in fact, if you dig into that, that's a renewable electricity target. In fact, there's a lot of biogas that could have gone into our energy system a lot earlier. It didn't because we had renewable electricity targets, and people could earn a certificate by producing a renewable electron, even though that was a poorer utilisation of that resource, which meant that you were producing non-responsive energy at lower efficiency than perhaps getting that molecule into a hard to electrify part of the economy. So I think it's catching up, but I think we're at a point now where we can have a sensible conversation about energy transition. We're going to need all options on the table. This is not a story about, that some loads shouldn't be electrified. It's a conversation about changing the way we think about energy and having more equal type policy that enables all energy solutions to come onto the table. And I think now, as you say, people are more conscious about recovering, recycling. I think another way to start thinking about our waste and residue streams is, to get away from this mindset of waste and start thinking them as resources, to actually start thinking about what's in that residual resource. Well, there's energy, and what we haven't talked about is nutrients. So the other benefit of anaerobic digestion is you can aggregate the organic waste, you can utilise the energy for really hard to electrify sectors, but you can get the nutrients back to agriculture. By chucking our organics into landfill, we get very little energy back, huge amount of fugitive emissions, and we don't get the nutrients back for agriculture. So the challenges in front of us is to get the policy mechanisms right to enable this. Obviously, there's a lot of work in terms of advocacy, and people understand what biomethane is, which is exactly what we're talking about today. People aren't scared of it. There's a lot of thought, it's called all different things around the world. It's called renewable natural gas and renewable heat in UK. There's a lot of different ways to refer to it. In this market, it's referred to as biomethane. Perhaps we should be thinking about calling it something else, so it's not associated with what people think of as methane or gas because of their perceptions around fossil fuels. So, but I think when people really start to put that end-to-end idea in their head and understand circular economies, the concept of waste nothing, then I think the value proposition is better understood.
And you talked about the idea of, we've got an electricity target at the moment. How much will the industry benefit from having a renewable gas target?
It's inconceivable that you're going to have effective energy transition if you're biasing one vector over another. Electricity is exceptionally important. Renewable electricity is a really essential part of transition, but so are renewable gases, and I'd say so are other renewable fuels. So yes, I mean, you need, the renewable electricity target was very, very effective in establishing a supply chain. It did its job. It underwrote initial demand. It got investor confidence. It allowed large amount of capital to invest. It created innovation. It created scale, and it was very successful. But now, without a renewable gas target, we see outcomes which aren't effective. As I said before, you see perverse outcomes where a renewable molecule which could have greater benefit outcome for the energy system being kept as a molecule where it can be used on demand and provide a storage gap, being converted to renewable electricity because of that target and that scheme. So I think whether we call it a renewable gas target, whether we call it a renewable fuels target, but we do need to create targets in all of the vectors to create that sensible energy transition, because each vector has its own benefit and competitive advantage.
You mentioned before that there are some sectors or some parts of the industry that are hard to electrify and where biomethane might be able to provide a solution. Can you give us a couple of examples of what they are and why biomethane is a stronger option than electrification in those circumstances? So
there's a few really important energy demands that renewable gases can play an important role. So industrial heat is a really important solution. Now, some industrial heat can be electrified. Some industrial heat, very high temperatures, it's very, very costly, and sometimes the technology doesn't exist. The other issue is that sometimes it's very expensive and complex to electrify that demand, and that can result in a lot of business disruption to electrify that demand. And on top of that, sometimes too, that demand, there's just not sufficient electrical capacity in the grid, even if that was to be electrified, that the business can't get that sort of capacity. So the ability for them to get on with their core business, utilise existing infrastructure, using a renewable molecule to displace a fossil molecule, provides a very, very compelling solution. Additionally to that, a lot of that demand is 24/7. So if you electrify that, then you've got to have sufficient capacity in your grid and battery storage to back that up, to provide that 24/7 load. Again, a renewable gas can provide that on a 24/7 basis because of the inherent storage within the system. Other loads that are very, very important, power generation. So, gas-fired power stations that provide that responsive energy, that can also be provided by with renewable gas. There's heavy vehicle transport, so bio-CNG, bio-LNG that can play an important role, like they do in California and the United Kingdom. And then there are other demands as well, which I know we always think about. Well, let's just go and electrify residential demand. But if you look into some of that demand, a lot of it is not coincidental with wind and solar. So typically, your peak demand in a gas network for residential demand is at 7 o'clock on a winter's night. If you look at the market penetration at that time of wind and solar, it's very low. So that is typically being met by fossil fuels anyway, whether that's coal or an open cycle gas turbine. So to convert that over to electricity, at a significant cost per household is not necessarily the best thing to do until we've perhaps gone further down the decarbonisation of the electrical system. So I'm not saying that that there's not a case to electrify some household demand that can be electrified, but again, it comes to a value proposition of what is your best business case for abating carbon dioxide. And that's, if you have optionality, you can make sensible decisions, because everyone's decision will be slightly different relative to the way they use energy, when they use energy, what appliances they have, what's the cost of switch. So having another option in the system surely allows better consideration of and more efficient capital allocation of what loads to electrify and when.
I just want to go back to your work as Managing Director at Optimal. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your current projects and maybe any projects that are in the pipeline? Our
core business is developing anaerobic digestion facilities for biomethane production, aiming to inject that into the grid. So we have identified 10 projects to date that we're qualifying based on organic feedstocks that we've assessed as accessible and areas in which we can collect those economically and process those for gas grid injection. Our most progressed project to date is in Westbury, Tasmania, where we're looking to process around 200,000 tonnes of organic waste that would have otherwise gone to landfill or being land spread. And for that project, we'll be looking to process the gas for gas grid users and also for a micro LNG facility. So effectively looking to create a bio LNG product, which is, I think, an exciting opportunity for Tasmania. That project, we're looking really to move ahead to make a financial investment decision by the end of this year. And our other projects, we look to our aspiration is to have 10 of those projects operational by 2030. And I should say, that's the tip of the iceberg. We're just one of many developers that are in this space that can bring this market forward. And I think that the decade beyond us, we'd be looking at hundreds, and the market would be looking at thousands of projects of that sort of scale to integrate into existing gas infrastructure.
I love talking to people who have been able to move from the theoretical to the actual practical and getting projects up and going. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've been doing at Optimal Renewable Gas. So to get to that next level, so to really scale up to those hundreds of different projects or the thousands of different projects that you mentioned there, what do you need in the policy arena? What policy changes do you need? What incentives from government or from the market are you looking for to be able to scale up to that level where we're actually going to see a genuine impact on our emissions targets?
The first thing we've really got to make sure is that we enable particularly large gas users to recognise the full benefit of contracting to a renewable gas. And by that, I mean, like a business can contract electricity from a wind or solar farm, businesses have to be able to be rewarded for bringing their long-term demand to underwrite investment in displacing fossil gas. It feels like that would be a no-brainer. We really need, clean energy regulator to look into this market and enable businesses to do that. I mean, we have large industrial business, but that have big drivers to decarbonise through safeguard mechanisms. They need to be able to contract this. Some of them, yes, they can electrify some of their demand and contract renewable electricity, but they should be afforded the same opportunity if it makes sense commercially to contract a renewable gas position. So I think that is absolutely essential. I think a renewable gas target, if you want to accelerate this market and the capital, we're talking about an industry that's estimated to provide up to $50 billion of additional GDP by 2050 if it gets going, and employ around 20,000 people. Providing benefits into regional Australia and so I think if you're going to accelerate that, you do need to actually think about a target. I think a target does provide certainty for investors. That does a couple of things. It de-risks the cost of capital. It also streamlines regulation because it's then looking to enable the lowest cost pathway of achieving it. And it aligns the party. It allows you to build scale, allows you to build in, bring in the right technology and set up the efficient supply chains. So I think those two things are absolutely essential. And of course, I think awareness and advocacy. I think if politicians and policymakers could be careful of their language, if people actually thought, I would love to hear people talking about fossil gas rather than, indiscriminately, damaging the brand of the gas as an energy vector. Collectively as Australians, we have an amazing gas infrastructure. That's a huge asset. It can be reutilised. It's got a huge amount of storage, a huge amount of flexibility. It provides ultimate reliability at probably 10 times that of what electrical infrastructure provides. I think when people talk about gas being a fossil fuel, I don't think it's helpful. I think people have just got to be open about gas like other energy sources. Can be renewable. So I think that that does play a big role, because again, a lot of it's a mindset shift. To start thinking about energy, and if we do that, we've got an opportunity to have a sensible energy transition with an integrated energy system. The gas system provides a lot of security into our energy system. And if we actually get the policy right, we can afford to then, play off the benefits of each of the benefits of the energy system. No doubt at all that, low cost renewable electricity is essential on the production side, but so is the reliability and the storage potential, and having customers with solutions where they don't have to change their equipment and appliances. We have an energy system now. We haven't touched much on hydrogen, but hydrogen, we've got the ability to turn electrons into molecules now with hydrogen, and we've always had the ability to turn molecules into electrons. So that sort of I guess, sector coupling piece. We now have an ability to see the energy system rather than gas, electricity and transport. We can actually create policy around enabling each of those energy systems to play their role in transition, which is going to give us a lot more reliability, a lower cost transition than just simply focusing on one vector, which can be renewable electricity.
As part of your, advocacy work and stakeholder engagement at Optimal Renewable Gas been about changing that narrative of, electrification is good, gas is bad, which is something we've seen play out a lot, particularly from certain political parties who would like to label all gas as bad? Has that been part of your advocacy work?
It certainly has, and I reflect on, my time in the gas industry. I think, gas got a really bad name, because it used to be the good guy. It was considered, the way of enabling decarbonisation, its flexibility. It still is lower emission by delivered energy than the electrical grid. But somewhere along the line, it kind of lost its social licence. That could have been from some of the issues with coal seam gas and being exported on the East Coast. But, the advocacy work we do now is really to try and help people understand that gas does not have to be a fossil fuel, and to break that nexus. I think if they break that nexus, and you talk about the benefits of gas in your energy system, that it complements wind and solar. This is not either or, it's both. You're going to need both, and they both play a really, really important role. And so, I'm never advocating for gas demand that can cheaply and easily be electrified to be electrified. Excellent. Go and do that. It's a great business case. Go and do it. But what I'm talking about is optionality for businesses, so they can make a carbon dioxide decision of what is the lowest cost to decarbonise their business. Absolutely. A lot of the advocacy and what we see around the world is, biomethane, it has a lot of different names. It can be called renewable heat in some jurisdictions, and it can be called renewable natural gas in other jurisdictions. I've toyed a lot with what it should be called, because people's negative connotations around methane and gas and what, if it had a better name, it was better branded, and maybe people would better understand it. But I think all we've tried to do as a business is put the business case out there of a really available resource that can have significant decarbonisation benefit, not just for the gas users, but for much better management of waste and a circular economy system for beneficial use of digestate. And there's also other benefits too, and it might get a little bit technical, but as the organic material breaks down, when I mentioned that you've got biogas in the form of, you've got the residual methane and carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide, again, which is, part of the carbon life cycle, it's not additive, it hasn't come from a previous millennia, that can be utilised. So you can actually create other green fuels like that. You can remethanate to increase your amount of biomethane production if you combine it with hydrogen, but there's also green methanols. You can even store that to have carbon negative solutions resultant from the biomethane production. So, it's about, for me, getting the message out there. I guess a little bit of is the conversation, with people like yourselves, and all levels of government. Energy is complex. It's hard to sometimes, it'd be really nice to say everything I needed to say in 10-second soundbite so people got it. But you can see it's actually quite a complex conversation when we talk about, establishing a circular economy, recovering the energy, how that's done, why gas is not not an evil energy source. we need to have those deeper conversations and grow awareness, and and I think that's what we will continue to do.
Couldn't agree more with needing to change the narrative based on past experience and perhaps the gas industry losing its social license. And Mike, I'd also agree with your point about, there's no need to create this into a us versus them debate. It doesn't need to be electrification versus renewable gas. Like, there are use cases for both, and there's an argument for having multiple renewable energy technologies. Like, why, and part of our campaign work in this space has been focused on, why would you ever just put all of your eggs into one basket? Why not use all the technology available? So to that end, why do you think some governments have been so narrow focused on the renewable technologies that they're looking at?
If we go back 20 years, that solar and wind industry had to actually fight so hard for their social license, and they did a really good job for that. And they've continued to do a really good job. They're really excellent, well-developed, strong lobby group. So they're well heard by government, and it's a big industry that employs a lot of people. So that also plays to government. On the biomethane side, it's an emerging industry with, a very small lobby group. And so, government's not necessarily hearing it from a whole cohort of an established industry. But I do encourage them, if they do want to look at the opportunity in the market, they don't, shouldn't look too much further than, the opportunities that are happening now in the US and that have happened in Europe in terms of the jobs, the development of that market. But yeah, we're in our infancy, and it's a tough and complex conversation of energy transition, and I think it's traditionally been easier in sound bites to talk about renewable electricity.
You're talking about, right now we're in a tough part of the energy transition. So I sort of want to end on a bit of a positive, theoretical, hopeful note. So in the year 2050, what role do you hope renewable gas will be playing in our energy mix?
There's absolutely a net zero pathway for gas, and people will challenge me on this. I think it's actually easier to get to in gas than it is electricity because of the inherent storage inside your gas infrastructure. So I think biomethane will play a huge role. We've certainly got the organic resources for it to play, and that's been validated. Bioenergy roadmap and a number of publications around our bio potential. I think then you've got other renewable gases, synthetic methane, which can be used from the biogenic carbon dioxide and hydrogen. Then you've got blends of hydrogen, and then you've got direct hydrogen. So there are renewable gases that can play that role. There's the resources to provide it. And I believe there's the business case in terms of, the existing infrastructure that's vital for that transition. As I said before, there's also that case in which some of the carbon dioxide can be stored. So you can look at it playing the essential role of, carbon negative components of the energy system as well. So look, as I said, we're hopeful of 10 projects by 2030. We think there's probably 100 of projects in the next decade for us, but we're just one of many developers that are looking in this market. We think there's thousands of project, billions of dollars of investment that will contribute to the renewable gas transition.
Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. You have been so insightful, and it's been great to hear from someone directly working in the biomethane industry and explaining it to us. So thank you for joining us.
Great to be on. Thank you.
And if you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to subscribe to Michelson Alexander Explains wherever you get your podcast.